This is a level 2 English presentation. The title there says Organise Writing for Different Purposes Using Appropriate Format and Structure. The session will look at types of document and layout features that can be found in the different types of document. The session may be useful if you're preparing to take English writing exams or for considering questions that will be asked of you in a reading exam. So we'll have a look at types of documents. These are based on examples seen by me in previous mock and full English exams. You would be working to create personal letters and emails, so they could involve thank yous or passing on instructions. Professional letters and emails, so sharing information or raising concerns. Reports, either to work colleagues, committees, local authorities or societies. Stories, such as news reports or giving witness accounts. And opinion pieces, points of view, recommendations, reviews, and personal experiences. If you have to create a letter, you must include addresses and dates. Start with your name and address in the top left-hand corner of the document, then enter the date that you're writing on, and next write the address that you're writing to. It's likely if you have to do a letter in an exam that you will be told the address that your document would be sent to. So make sure that you include that in your letter. Here we have an example of it. I would say to you that you don't necessarily need to put your name in when doing the exam. You can just put the address that you're writing from, and I would make one up for the address that you're writing from in the exam. Don't put your genuine address down. But here is the sender's address at the top, then the date underneath, and the address and person that I'm writing to on the is then underneath the date. If you have to send an email, you have to include the email address in any send or you won't be delivered. Exam scenarios should give you an email address to write to, so make one up for the task if you aren't given one to use. For those of you who are using exams which are being set up by the Pearson's governing body, they generally already have the email address in place that you'll be writing to and that you'll be writing from. So you shouldn't need to include your own email address, but just make sure that you check that there is an email address that you're writing to if you have been given one as part of the activity. Also, remember to include a subject heading in the subject box. When you write an email in real life, you generally put subject heading in so that people know what the contents of the email are. Please remember to put one in the exam situation as well. So we have the examples here of the email address that you're writing to, and also the subject box having information inside it. Just as a small point with the email that's been written here, there's the sign off at the bottom. It's an informal email because it's using Hi John rather than Dear John. It signs off with the thank you and Josh, and then they put down their role and the company they work for. Just a small point, if you're having to do an email and you are told who you're working for and maybe what role you have, you might like as a just as a part of it to put your position and the company that you work for underneath your name when you sign off. It's just a suggested idea to make the email look more professional, but only really necessary if you are having to write it in a professional scenario in the exam. If you're having to do a personal email to a friend or family member, then you just put your name in. So salutations and greetings, so how to greet people with the letter. We saw on the previous slide the email that began with Hi John. You would use dear if you're writing to someone in a formal context, so a cover letter for a job or reporting an incident in your home, writing to a customer or patient. You can use hi for informal contexts, such as an email to a friend, an email to a colleague where you're just passing on information, an email to a family member, etc. You use dear sir stroke madam or to whom it may concern if you don't know the person you're writing to within your task. Paragraphing, in terms of how the document should look, in all documents, writing should be split into paragraphs because it makes it easier to read and it allows for greater flow in your writing. And it also allows you to put together a structure for what you're writing about, because that can be a challenge to people to think, oh, how do I outline this story or this scenario? So using paragraphing will help you to do that. So we're going to have a look at a scenario taken from a mock writing exam. You recently had to catch an early morning flight for a work meeting. The flight was delayed for several hours and then it was cancelled with no information given at any point as to the reason why. You do not feel that this is acceptable and have decided to complain to the airline. Write a letter of complaint to the airline company. You should consider how you might persuade them to compensate you. So the scenario here tells us what's happened. It gives me the information that I would need to work into the letter, that the flight was delayed for several hours and cancelled without any information given, or the reason why. It tells me the feeling or emotion that should be guiding me while I'm writing, that I don't feel that it's acceptable and I'm writing to complain. And it also says you should consider how you might persuade them to compensate you. Now, you'll find in the writing exams, you're often given supporting material, which you can use to back up the documents. You can use the information in that supporting material to help you when you're putting together your documents. In the case of this exam, which was originally created by NCFE, there was a guide by the FAA which indicated what customers are entitled to in terms of cashback, depending on the duration of time that their flight has been delayed. So you can pick from that and use that as a basis to include in your document. Now, we'll have a look at the breakdown of the document in a moment, but just going back to the points about paragraphing, if we just write everything as one block without putting in a paragraph, it looks untidy and it's a lot of information to try and process. Now, I'd say to you that they'd be reading the content of what you're writing. If the content's good, the paragraphing may not be an issue. However, you might lose out on marks if you don't paragraph your writing appropriately. So here's all the information that I wrote to the airline about the delayed and cancelled flight. That's all written in one block. Now, if I compare it to when I paragraphed it, you can see it's a lot easier to read. Not only that, but for the examiner, it does a much better job of showing how I've constructed the document. So I've gone with my greeting, to whom it may concern, because I wasn't given a name of a person to write to. My first paragraph sets up the scenario. So I was booked to take a flight with your airline on the 21st of February from Heathrow to Rome. So that gives them the situation of what I was doing. Then the next two paragraphs outline the problem and the reason why I'm writing. The flight was due to depart at 2 p.m. We were called for boarding at 1:20 and then made to wait without any staff checking our boarding passes. We started to realise something was wrong when 2 p.m. came around and we'd still not gotten on the plane. Then I make a paragraph break to indicate further problems that came up. We were still at the boarding gate at 2:45 when an announcement came over the tannoy that the flight was delayed. This announcement came from Heathrow Flight Control. At no point had any staff from your airline shown up, so no one had a clue what was happening. So then I go on to outline why I feel the company were at fault. Finally, at 4 p.m, someone came to open up the desk, but passes were not checked until 4:30 p.m. The stewardess on the desk had no explanation for why the delay had taken place. According to her, she wasn't even supposed to be on the flight. And then I move into outline what it is I would like done. We finally took off at 5:30 p.m. after a long and uninformed wait. I would like to claim compensation, as according to FAA guidelines, any flight which is delayed for longer than 3 hours should result in 50% compensation being paid back to the passenger. And then there's a sign off. I look forward to hearing from you, and I would then put yours faithfully, David Pascoe. So the paragraphing shows how I've taken on the various things that the activity wanted me to include in the letter. It shows how I've worked them into the letter that I'm writing, how I've built the story, the narrative up so that it follows a logical structure, outlining the problem, why I think the company were at fault, and what I would like done with it. And it's much easier to see that breakdown by using paragraphing. Sign-offs. Your letter or email can have a number of different sign-offs depending on the situation. So in a formal letter or email, when you're writing to somebody that you've addressed by name, you would use yours sincerely. So if you'd started the email with, or the letter with Dear John, Dear Maggie, Dear Mrs. Singh, Dear Dr. Lang, whatever it is, if you have a name on your formal letter or email that you're writing to, you can end with yours sincerely. But you'll use yours faithfully in formal letters or emails when writing to someone you've addressed only by their title or by not using a name. So if you have to start with Dear Sir, Dear Madam, to whom it may concern, you will end your letter with yours faithfully before you put your name. You don't have to use yours sincerely or yours faithfully when you're writing to someone that you know well or writing an informal document to a loved one. In those instances, you can end with love, best wishes, see you soon, whatever you like. Okay, if you were asked to put together a report document, or you were reading a report document as part of a reading exam, you could be asked to write a report for a committee, a working party that's investigating certain processes, or for a club or society. When reading a report, you may find that you will be given a table of contents to read. Reports can cover a large number of pages, and using a contents page will allow people to find relevant sections more quickly. The original document would include page numbers, which would match up to those listed in the contents. It's doubtful that you'll have to write a page of contents as part of a writing exam. You may see contents pages within a reading exam and be asked a question about why would it be useful, or which section would somebody need to go to in order to find information about a particular thing based on what's on the contents pages. It's probably likeliest that you'll see them if you're taking an ICT exam, where it'll probably be pre-created and you will have to put it into a document. Usually comes after the title page of a document that you're putting together. We use bullet points in reports. We can use them in any context, but particularly in reports, and they're used to outline steps or processes in an easy to follow list form. They either help to break a lot of information down so that it's easier to take in, or they set out how a task should be done, or things that the reader should consider by setting out an order. Here's where I've used bullet points within a piece of writing rather than as just a list. This comes from a report, the Depression Report, a New Deal for Depression and Anxiety Orders, I think by the London School of Economics in 2006. And we have the writing here. This report is about action based on analysis. First, we give 6 reasons for action, and rather than separating them out with commas within a paragraph, they use the colon to introduce the list of reasons, and they separate out those items by using bullet points. Graphs and charts. A report can contain a great deal of information. By using graphs or charts, the writer is able to show information in a way which condenses it down so that readers can gain a quicker understanding of it. By looking at graphs and charts, the reader can approach the more in-depth text with a clearer idea of what they're going to be reading about. So I have a pie chart here which shows the main causes of stress. And in a report, each of the issues mentioned that contribute to stress in the chart may well be written about in greater depth in the report, and how it relates to causes of stress that are widely felt. But by including the chart, it allows me straight away, before I start reading anything, to see, okay, workloads are the main cause of stress. People issues, whatever they may be, are the second largest cause of stress. Juggling the work-personal life balance is the third largest, and the lack of job security is the fourth and smallest cause of stress. So I've got that information to take on board before I have to start reading it in greater depth. It just helps with a little kind of visual cue to help set up that information. Talking about when we're writing things, the use of subheadings. This is particular when you write a report or a news story. Subheadings help introduce new topics within a piece of writing. They signpost for the reader a change of topic so that the reader is able to follow the structure of the writing. And we'll see some examples of this again, taken from the Depression Report. We have 2 subheadings here, just introducing in each context what the content underneath it will be about. So we see the scale of mental illness, and it then leads into the 3 paragraphs that relate to that topic. Then we have the subheading here, mental illness and deprivation. So that tells us, okay, so the report is now changing subject, and the next section will be about these issues. And it's been signposted for us by having the subheading rather than us suddenly seeing the change of subject and thinking, well, how does that relate to the previous topic or the earlier topic? The subheading helps to divide that out a bit better. If you're having to write a news story or a news article as part of a writing exam, you'll be given the scenario that you have to use. When writing a story about something which has happened, you have to bear in mind the following things that will make up the story. It's called the who, what, where, when, how, why structure. So you need to think about who or what is the subject of the story, what has or is going to happen. Are you writing about something which has already taken place or something that's going to happen in the future? Where did it or will it happen? So if you're promoting an event that's taking place, in a few weeks' time, and you want to raise awareness of that in the story, you need to say where it's going to take place. If you're writing about an event that's already happened, again, you would want to mention where the incident happened. When did it or will it happen? Again, if you're promoting something that's happening in the future, you've got to let people know when they're going to be able to do it. Likewise, if you're writing about a story that's already happened, explain when it happened. Did it happen in the last week, in the last month, in the last couple of days? It just helps give the reader more information about what they're reading. How did it and will it happen? Or why did it and will it happen? So again, the reasons behind the things that caused either something to take place or that has prompted people to do things. So maybe they're protesting against the closure of a local hospital or a local youth centre. Maybe they're doing it because they want to try and raise awareness of an issue. Maybe something happens to that person in their own experience, and they want to inform and educate other people about it. They're all causes and reasons for why a certain story happened. Your layout can help you to represent some of these things. So if you're doing a news story, you'd put in a headline. All news stories start with a headline. They effectively act as the title of the story, and they usually represent the first sign of who, what, where in any story. So we have some examples here. Local beauty spot vandalised. Cyclist injured in collision with car. Falmouth wins Britain in Bloom Prize. So they tell us straight away, before we've even read anything about the story, who it's about, what's happened to them, and in certain cases, where it's taken place. Paragraphing in news stories if you're writing a news article, is a little different from the paragraphing that we had to use when writing an email or a letter. News stories are usually written in short paragraphs of a couple of sentences, and websites increasingly use paragraphs featuring just one long sentence per paragraph. The intention is that as you write the story, each paragraph builds on and provides more information compared to the one that went before it. So here in this story taken from the Falmouth Packet website, we have our headline, Aberdeen and Glasgow flights from Newquay. So straight away, that tells us what the story is going to be about. We have an opening paragraph that reiterates what the headline was, with 3 new year-round routes connecting Cornwall to Scotland from this spring. The northern reaches of the UK are back on the to-visit list for Cornish residents. The second paragraph then builds on how that's going to be possible. There are more flights to Edinburgh with Flybe and new services to Aberdeen and Glasgow with new operator Loganair. And then the next paragraph builds on that further by telling us when this is going to be possible and where we're going to be able to do it from. So from March 29th, Flybe services from Cornwall Airport Newquay to Edinburgh will operate up to 5 times a week throughout the year, a significant increase on the previous schedule. So it helps again to fill in just by doing those paragraphs, and they're all quite short. They're only about a sentence or 2 sentences at most. They all fill in the details of what the story is about, who it will affect, where it will be taking place, and when it will be taking place. As in a report, subheadings in a news story can help signpost a reader towards whatever the content of the new paragraph is. In a news story, the subheading is usually just a single word or a couple of words. So here's an example. We have our headline here, Youth Centre to Close. And the opening paragraphs talk about the closure of a youth centre, talk about where the youth centre was, how long it's been open, what it is it provides, and who it works with. And then the story wants to explain that one of the reasons why it's under threat is because of funding cuts. We learn as we go on that Croydon Borough Council announcing that it needs to make up to £4 million worth of cuts to services across 5 years. So that will mean that the funhouse has to close unless it can find £75,000 by the end of March. So having gone from the first set of paragraphs, which just talked about the youth centre and where it was and who it worked with, then when we do the change in the story to about the problems that the council have and the cuts in funding that have put the youth centre at risk, we put in the subheading funding cuts to show the reader that the story is now going to change emphasis. Images. News stories will often provide pictures to provide a visual context to their story. It may show where the story is set or the actions that people are taking. So the youth club closure may be supported by a picture of the youth club or by people protesting it, and the flights to Scotland from Newquay may include a picture of an aeroplane. I think in a writing exam, it's unlikely that you're going to have to worry about use of images. You may be asked in the reading exam why an image has been attached to a particular text and what it's trying to convey. And it's very likely that in an ICT exam, you will have to include images that that are included in files that are sent to you or that you can access at the start of the exam within the document that you're creating, and you'll have to put those in and arrange them in a suitable order. But here's just examples of how the pictures could be used in support of the story about the closure of the youth centre. In the first instance, we just see the building itself. In the second instance, we have protests against the proposed closure. If you're asked to write an opinion piece, that's either about your personal opinion, which draws on your own experiences, you can use most of the things we've already described. So you would want to use a headline to introduce it. You would paragraph it. However, if you're doing a piece that's based on your own point of view or your opinion, I would recommend that you can use slightly longer paragraphs than you would need to write if you were just doing a news story. You can use bullet points if you're writing instructions or presenting a list of things or to consider within the opinion piece. And you can use subheadings if you want to, as with the news story, you want to separate out what you're writing about so that you use the subheadings to introduce each topic or change of subject within the piece of writing that you're doing. Images can also be used to give easy visual support to what you're writing. Again, that probably won't be a factor in your writing exam. It's more likely to happen in your ICT exam, and the difference there being that you'll probably be told or given what you're having to write in the ICT exam, whereas in the English exam, you'll have to create it yourself. Here's an example of it, just in context. So we see the best holiday destinations for 2020 is our headline. The Sunday Times travel team selects the must-see spots for the year ahead is the subheading introducing the story. We have the images here which show a number of different places where we could go for the holiday, and then it starts the writing. So in summary, the layout features that we've looked at here included addresses, whether that be in letters or in emails, salutations and greetings and sign-offs, so the use of dear sir, yours faithfully, yours sincerely, etc. Paragraphing, contents pages, using bullet points to separate out items in a list, headlines and subheadings within news stories and articles, and why people may use graphs and charts to help make complex information easily identifiable, and also the use of images to supplement a story. You may like to take a few minutes just to put this on pause and just do this, just work through this quiz and just think about which layout items that you would use in the following situations. If you're looking for further work on the topic, you can go to BJSB, click on English Reforms, go to the writing section, and in Writing Text Level 2, you'll find more work about different things that are used to create documents.